Hello everybody and welcome back to my channel. I figured since I've been on YouTube for about 2 months or a little bit more than that, that it was time to introduce myself a little bit better. So today we're going to be doing Janaki over at Catomancy Tarot's Tarot Origin Story. So because I'm not comfortable showing my face on camera just yet, I'm going to flip through some of my cards, and especially the cards and decks that I had at the very beginning of my tarot practice for this video, just so that you've got some visual and it's not just my hands and a little cattail. So the first question is, what kind of religious upbringing did you have? I was lucky that I grew up in a very open household. I grew up in an agnostic household, and my siblings and I were really encouraged and welcome to explore anything and everything in regards to spirituality. We had a lot of freedom in that way to look at different religions and explore different things, and we were encouraged to discuss our beliefs and anything that we were curious about. The second question is, what was your first exposure to tarot and how did you get your first tarot deck? My first tarot deck was actually the Thoth. Well, it was supposed to be a different deck. I went to my local metaphysical store and picked up a copy of the Goddess Tarot. And when I was flipping through it, it had, I think, 2 Queen of Cups or something along those lines. It had a double card and was missing, I believe, one of the major arcana. So kind of important. So I took it back and asked the people at the counter which deck they recommended as a first-time user, and they gave me the option of a Rider-Waite-Smith or the Thoth, because they said these were the 2 kind of founding decks. You know, they were the decks that most people start on. And I looked up the cards and I looked at Death and the Fool particularly, because those were 2 archetypes that I was really interested in. I was interested in the Fool before coming to tarot and was actually kind of drawn to tarot from reading Robin Hobb's books, because in the first trilogy there's a character called the Fool, and I was just so enamored by them that I started looking up the Fool on Tumblr, because this was back when Tumblr was a big thing, and I kept getting the Fool tarot cards and I was like, what the heck? So I looked into it and dug deeper into tarot and was like, this is something I'm kind of interested in. So I went to the store, and that's how I ended up with the Thoth. That was kind of a roundabout way of answering the question. But in bullet points, I was reading a book and book series that had a Fool character in it, looked up the Fool to get imagery and analysis from that character, and found the Fool in tarot. Started looking into tarot a little bit more, dug deeper, and then picked up my first deck from the metaphysical store. So that was my first introduction and exposure to tarot, and this was my first deck ever. This is the physical copy of my first deck. I believe I got this in either late 2017 or early 2018. I was looking through my tarot journals, and my first reading was an introductory spread with this deck, and happened on February 18th of 2018. So I either got this in January or February and started playing with it, or got it a little bit before. I actually trimmed this Thoth deck, my very first deck, a long time after I'd gotten it. I am pretty sure that I trimmed it in 2020 after watching Dawn Michelle do it. I butchered mine horribly. I cut it with an X-Acto knife, and it wasn't super sharp, so it kind of tore the edges and I didn't measure it all, and it was a hot mess. But I don't really use this deck to read with. I have a mini one that I use if I'm going to pull out the Thoth, but I could use this. It still works perfectly fine, and it shuffles fine too. It's just not one that I'm drawn to working with at the present moment. Question number 3 is, when did tarot become a more important part of your practice, and when, if ever, did you stop being a skeptic? So I think that right off the bat, I believed in tarot. From holding this deck, there was just so much energy and power in just holding the box alone. I felt really jittery when I got back to my car from buying it in the store and holding the deck. It just felt so powerful. And I did a reading, or I pulled a card, I think during my introductory spread for this deck. I pulled some cards, and it was talking about how it was going to be very powerful and energetic, and I immediately was like, yes, of course, I can feel that already. It just was really powerful to me. I think that when I started understanding tarot better and being able to read without the use of the books, no, that's not even true. When I was first learning tarot, I used the guidebooks and would read the guidebooks, and I used them as bibliomancy. So when I was reading the little descriptions for the cards, there would be a word or a sentence that would really stick out to me from the reading that I felt was important for the tarot reading that I was doing. And that always helped make tarot feel very powerful and feel like it's not just a deck of cards. It's something else speaking, and not like a spirit is trapped in the cards or anything like that, but it felt like something more than just images and art. It was the universe speaking to me, or something, my higher being or spirit guides or something. The combination of the cards and the messages that came through from the cards in the guidebook, what I picked up on, really helped solidify tarot as this magical practice for me. So I think pretty much right from the beginning, I knew that tarot was special and that there was something more to it than meets the eye. This is my second deck that I purchased, and it's the Ostara Tarot. I have never been one for traditional imagery. I think that I've always been kind of turned off by the Rider-Waite-Smith, and that's why I picked up the Thoth Tarot for my first deck, because the images were much more free than the single scenic instances that were being shown on the Rider-Waite-Smith. So I picked up this one next. Question number 4 is, when did you start reading for others or start to read for clients, and why? Or if you haven't, have you ever thought about it? I have been reading for others. I read occasionally just for friends. It's not something that I've ever taken publicly yet, but I am very interested in. I think that I just need to gain some confidence. I've been reading tarot for at least 5 years now, and I just am still unsure of myself. And I think the only way that I'll get to being sure about myself and my readings and the guidance that I can share is by doing it for others. So I've read for friends, and I've read for my boyfriend. I read for myself every day. But I think this year is going to be the year where I start branching out. My word of the year I chose this year on my birthday was brave. So we'll see if I'm brave enough to really go into it, dive deep. The next question is number 5, and it's, what are some of your qualities from your background that make you a good reader? What do you bring to the table as a reader, and what do you think your tarot superpower is? I have always been a very voracious reader. I love fantasy. I always got sucked into fantasy books. Harry Potter, I flew through almost the whole series in a summer, and that's just kind of my go-to. But reading in general is something that I love, and I think that's something that I really bring to tarot, is that imagination from and creating stories from what cards I'm given and the imagery in the cards. I think also that's why I am not drawn to the Rider-Waite-Smith, because it feels very closed off to me, and there's not a lot of room for crafting a story with a couple of cards. They feel very straightforward, and this is what you get. This is the image on the card. This is the reading that you're getting from it. But with cards like this, or the Thoth, or the Herb Crafter's Tarot, they feel much more expansive, and I feel like I'm allowed to let my imagination wander and let the story unfold based on that. So I think that is something from my from my background, my love of reading, and I was an English major, so I think that also plays into it. That has helped me become the reader that I am and really develop these skills. So this is Tarot of the Magical Forest, I believe. The second part of question number 5 is, what do you think your tarot superpower is? And I think that reading for myself, it's just being intuitive and just knowing the second I see the cards what they're saying to me and what they want me to know and want to tell me. That's something that I've really developed through reading unconventional or non-traditional tarot decks, especially. Another thing that I have that I believe is my tarot superpower for myself is definitely the use of the guidebooks and the bibliomancy that I get from it, because that's something that has happened right off the bat and right from the very beginning. I would read the guidebook and there would be sentences that really felt like they were shining through or looked like they were bolder than other sentences. And I don't go through my guidebooks and underline the sentences that I feel are most powerful for me in that reading, because it changes every time. And having it be unmarked, having the guidebook be unmarked, really helps to allow me to gain different points of view and find different important sentences each time I read with the guidebook or the deck. And that's something that I haven't done so much anymore, but I have a video coming out later about some glorious guidebooks that go a little bit more in depth into how I use guidebooks and what I love in guidebooks and all of that. Another deck that I got pretty early on in my practice is the Afro Avatar Tarot, and I haven't really seen many people talking about this, but I absolutely adore it. It's based on Avatar: The Last Airbender. Question number 6 is, when did you get into TarotTube? What is your relationship with tarot and social media? So I got into TarotTube, watching it at least, probably around the time that I got my first tarot deck. or a little bit after. So mid 2018, I would say, is when I really got into TarotTube. And I think that I started really by watching pick-a-cards, and then it morphed into interpretations of the cards and how to read this way and different methods of reading. And then I found creators like Lisa Pepez and Kellyanne Maddox and Kelly from The Truth and Story and Anna from Astro Lady Tarot, who really makes in-depth videos about cards that offer different points of view and really bring up topics that I never would have thought about before seeing them online. Instagram and YouTube are really where I consume most of my tarot media. I love the written aspect when it comes to Instagram and being able to take pictures and write out. I've kind of started using my Instagram as a little bit of a tarot journal almost, just so that I can keep track of the cards that I'm doing for the daily draws, because sometimes I don't really write those into my journal because I feel like they take up too much space overall and they're just little snippets. But having them on Instagram is great because I can look back on them and see what I was going through or things that I was dealing with, but it doesn't clog up my tarot journal. I think that is it. I hope that I answered all of these questions clearly. Thank you so much for watching, and thank you for being with me on this tarot journey. I will see you all later.